G'day fans and welcome back to another exciting, and I use that term very, very loosely, Nerdin' with the Dags episode. It's episode number 2 of 4. How good is that? It is a warm night. It is a crappy world. The COVID's going everywhere. People are not very, very keen to get out and about. And of course, the big question I've got to ask everybody who's watching this show right now, which includes good old Colin and Joe and good old Rusky Babes is watching us, and even Gavin, he's my number one fan in Sydney. Why are you guys out there watching the Book of Boba Fett, mate? It is the coolest thing in the entire universe. Episode number 3 has dropped on Disney tonight. Get away from me because I'm just going to be wasting all of your time. Get out there and watch a bit of the old bubble fat, because I tell you what, that is going to be something very, very spectacular, very, very groovy. There we go, Rusky Babes. Hello, Dags World, 80s movies. Yes, it is. We're talking about the 1980s today. How good is this? And it's very funny. We're talking about the Book of Boba Fett. And good old Michael actually showed me the other week. He's actually got a Boba Fett number plate, B Fett, which I put on my website tonight. So if you want, you can go check it out. Just do a Google search on science fiction customized number plate. It's very, very exciting stuff. Anyway, so, Jeffro said he doesn't have Disney Plus. So in his case, it's like a Disney minus if you don't mind umpire. Very, very cool. Aaron has said he's watching in my underwear, as one does, so long as there's no existential growths that come with it. That's the most important thing. Where am I going with that? So there you go. All right, so a couple of things I want to point out before we get into the very, very exciting part of the show, if there is such a thing. I watched last week's episode, and even I couldn't get over the fact that I kept repeating myself, how good is that? How cool is that? And I thought, oh my God, it was absolutely painful. So I will make a concerted effort, even though I've done it already, to try and minimize those statements. And the reason why I do that is because while I'm saying how good is that, I'm thinking of the next thing I have to say rather than just having complete silence, which of course is absolutely just not the done thing. So there you go. Oh, so I've got to stop saying that too. Anyway, so it's killing me already, guys. Very, very cool. And there we go. Good old Thomas is watching. Yes, Thomas is always watching, which is very, very groovy. And so I've just said it again, very, very groovy. What? No 7 of 9 episodes. No Star Trek episodes on this episode in this show, but I like that. Yes, 4 episodes. So this is the second one. We've got 2 more after this, and that's it. I'm Dunskies. And then your ears can relax and take it easy for the rest of your life, which is particularly groovy. And of course, I'm being violated from the vial. How grouse is that? Now I have to say it. How grouse is that? Because that is a grousing. There is nothing like being violated by the vial. Anyway, so the episode tonight, we're talking about the good old 1980s science fiction movies of the 1980s. Now, I don't know about everybody out there, but my fandom journey started in the 1980s, and it's a bit of a big deal. So I got involved with Austrek, the Star Trek fan club, in 1984. So I was right there when all this stuff was going on, which was particularly groovy, I've got to say. Now, for those people out there who are wondering, right, I'm making a specific point, because even though the 80s was really, really big for sci-fi, when it comes to The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi and all the rest of it, I'm actually not discussing those tonight. So there's nothing against them whatsoever, but I'm deliberately omitting them from the discussion because, and I will explain that at the end of the episode as to why that is the case. So the focal point tonight is, of course, on great 1980s sci-fi moments and memories. And I was trying to think, well, how am I going to do this? I mean, am I just supposed to just rattle them off alphabetically, chronologically, by the year, or good ones and bad ones? So in the end, I thought, you know what, I'll just chuck in a few that appeal to me for whatever reason, and we maybe have a bit of a chat and get people's thoughts and views as to how it all went. And that's the most important thing. So, it's all a bit of, like, as you can say, it's my Dags faves, if you will. So, which is particularly groovy in my personal opinion. So there you go. Good old Glennis has joined us. Go Dags. Absolutely awesome. So there you go. Yes, Con 80, which is the sci-fi convention that I helped with a whole bunch of other dudes, was 5 years ago, 2017. That's right. So absolutely insane. So there's a whole lot of history that goes on there. And yes, it's particularly good to say. You're not saying how goodish is that? How good is... I don't know what I'm saying anymore. So until I watched the episode back, I wasn't even aware of half the stuff I was yabbering on about. It was like, even my ears were hurting. So what can I say? Here we go. I'm watching Aaron in his underwear. Oh, what are the dudes wearing their underwear tonight? Oh, it's so hot outside. I completely understand. So yes, very important. So there you go. And good old Russell saying he's wearing his Con 80 t-shirt, as one should. So for those who are interested, you need to go to my personal website, which is darrenmaxwell.com.au to go to the Con80 website to see what that convention was all about 5 years ago this year. Absolutely insane. All right, so the key thing about the whole thing with the 1970s and like in the 80s, we should say, with science fiction, of course, is that it was the first decade in terms of science fiction movies that were recognized by the entire movie industry as being a bit of a big deal. Because prior to that, if you know, science fiction was a bit of an oddity sort of thing. Movies would come and go, and they sort of like, it was just an eclectic sort of thing. I mean, there was the odd hit here and there, but for the most part, most people didn't give a shit about sci-fi movies. It wasn't until the late 70s where suddenly studios realized, hey, there's money to be made in this stuff. There's an audience for it. And for that reason, they needed to produce material to cater for it. So from the very beginning of 1980, things just took off, and it was completely insane and absolutely magnificent. And of course, that's what's led us to where we are today. And I was thinking, if I'm going to kick off with something that occurred in 1980, film-wise, I thought, where am I going to start? And I thought, I might as well start at one of the greatest 1980 movies of all time in terms of like, this is just so cool. And of course, we're talking about, Conquest of the Earth, the old Galactica 1980 movie stitched together from bits and pieces of the episodes. And in particular, I just wanted to highlight this scene when the Cylons, and I have discussed this with Aaron on another show, when the Cylons come down and blow the shit out of Los Angeles. How grouse was that? And I'm going to say that legitimately. So very, very cool. So for people out there who may or may not remember this film, it was released theatrically. It was obviously stitched together episodes of Galactica 80, which was a TV show, which was complete tripe. Even Galactica fans won't acknowledge it. But this particular episode was awesome. And if I'm not mistaken, I think a lot of the destruction scenes came from the movie Earthquake, made about 7-8 years prior. But just the sequence, it didn't actually happen in the film. It was like a vision as to what could happen. But in terms of just making grouse sequences, this was that, rather. Go Battlestar, absolutely awesome. I mean, in fact, even Glennis, who's a massive Battlestar fan, even he will say, Galactica 80, yes, let's just move on from that, shall we? So there you go. And there you go. I've just said, there you go. Very, very cool. Where are you? Rusky Babes of the Flash. Oh, my God, there's a lot of letters in that. What can I say? Why are you wearing someone else's clothes? Me, I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that question is. Hang on. I've got Alan joining us for the very first time. Any movie with blowing the shit out of LA is worth watching in the big screen. Totally agree with you. And it was an awesome moment of the film. It was probably about the best part of it. The rest of it was complete rubbish. But it came and went, and there you go, which was particularly good. Galactica was very bad for ripping off stock footage. Completely agree. So there you go. Now, what's Calvin wearing? What's this discussion about what people are wearing? So anyway, I'm going to move on. Otherwise, I'll never get this episode done. All right, the next one up, 2010. As I said, I'm just chucking these at random, right? So the cool thing about this particular film, of course, it was the sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey, considered to be one of the best, if not the best, science fiction movies ever made, right? Stanley Kubrick, absolutely awesome. 2010 comes along, Peter Hyams, and he goes, you know what? Everything that Stanley Kubrick did for the film, I'm going to just chuck it out the window, right? I'm going to have sound effects in space, right? I'm going to have synthesized music. Also struck Zarathustra in synthesized sounds. Absolute tripe, but hey, it's the 1980s. You kind of got to do it, right? There's a lot of humor. There's a bit of humor. There's a bit of mucking around. There's some special effects, but sounds in space was the absolute killer. Now, all things being equal, 2010 wasn't that bad a film, really. I mean, they had to recast, obviously, Haywood Floyd, because that was Roy Schneider's character in this movie. But in terms of some of the visual effects, it was kind of groovy to see what they did with it. And of course, they got to go to the Discovery, and all the visual effects on this side of it was particularly good. The downside to this particular movie, of course, in the real 2010, which was 12 years ago, there was no Soviet Union, right? That's all long gone. It's just the Ruskies now. And so everything that was happening in the film in 2010, because it was made in the 80s when the Cold War was still going, was completely out of date. So that was a bit of a downside to it. So these days, if the Russians and the Americans want to go to space, they're off jaunting together, right? They've got the Mir space station, jump on board, yay team, party. So, but I got to admit, 2010 for me was a bit of a personal favorite. And I will share this one story for you. It's an absolute classic. A couple of people have heard this before. I went and saw the film at the WorldCon in 1985, AussieCon 2, and I took a girl to the screening with me, and we're sitting in the cinema, And we're watching the movie, and I'm thinking, I've got to get my arm around it. I get a bit snuggly and cuddly and all the rest of it. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do that without making it too obvious? Now, if you know the movie well enough, there's a really, really loud sequence, the aero braking sequence when they go around Jupiter. It's really loud, noisy, and very bright and flashy. And just as the sequence, I'm waiting. And just as that sequence comes up, I slip my arm around her. Oh, it's all good. I got my arm. It's all good on the back of the chair. She's snuggling in. I'm snuggling in. It's all groovy until my arm starts to fall asleep. And I was like, I'm sitting there and I was like, oh my God, I am absolutely dying. It's like my arm is like losing all its blood. And I'm thinking, mate, it took me so long to get it here. It's just going, sorry, dude, you're going to have to take one for the team and just hang it out there. And that's exactly what happened. So it was particularly groovy, I've got to say. So, and that was back in 1985. Grant has never seen 2001 or 2010. Well, you could argue that if you only see 2001, that's enough. You don't need to see 2010. It's a continuation of the story, but it's up to the individual to decide if they think it's necessary or not. But I mean, either way, it was a completely or vastly different movie to 2001, and I don't think most people even know what 2010 even is anymore. So very, very groovy. I like this from Adzi from way up here. Conquest of the Earth. Seriously, don't make me go and watch Fett. Why are you watching me? Welcome Boba Fett's on. Chapter 3's on tonight. Go and check it out. So you've got to do that. Rusky Babes will say, yay, the Ruskies. Absolutely awesome. So there you go. Very, very cool. So the next one that's coming along, as I said, I'm just chucking these at random. They're sort of alphabetical, of course, was the big killer of them all, Aliens, right? How often do you get a sequel that comes along that absolutely kicks ass over its original? The original movie was excellent, and this version just ticked all these boxes. And I don't know about, and this is what I'm trying to suggest here, is that can you remember when you saw these things for the very first time? And I remember seeing Aliens for the first time. I think it was at the Valhalla, maybe in Richmond, and they had the sound was so loud, and it was like, mate, this is absolutely awesome. And look back on it now, and there's like a million Alien movies and all the rest of it, but this one absolutely kicked ass big time. And it's one of the few films I can think of that has no faults in it. And from my perspective, I wouldn't say nothing's perfect, but it's very close to perfection as you can get. It's just that good. It's like it's got no weak parts anywhere. The characters are awesome. The visual effects are awesome. The aliens are fantastic. The action scenes, you just can't beat them. And in all, it's just a magnificent movie. And once they made this, of course, when you got around to like Alien 3, there was no way in the world they're going to top it. It's almost like, guys, stop right here. You cannot top Aliens. And I think most people would agree with me on that one. As you said, the 2010, we're still back to 2010, stands by itself as a great movie. And I'd agree. I enjoyed it. It was great. I mean, the synthesized music kind of kills it a little bit and dates it badly by today's standards. But just seeing the monolith again in space and the discovery and all the rest of it was particularly groovy. And, of course, because in the original 2001 movie they destroyed all the models on the sets, they had to redesign all the sets based on footage from the film. That's how they did it. So Michael has said, awesome. Don't remember how many times I've seen it. I assume you're referring to Aliens. It is a movie that has such great repeat value. It is fantastic. And, of course, when the special edition came out with all the extra bits, that was particularly groovy. But I still stand on the view the theatrical version was outstanding as well. Aaron has said, when he first saw Aliens for the first time, loved it. Couldn't believe how many times they dropped the F-bomb now. I wouldn't bat an eye. Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And, yeah, I mean, some people criticized it and called it Rambolina, good old Sigourney with Ripley. And it's like, that's just a bit bloody rich. I mean, it's like she's just trying to save the kid and save the world and all the rest of it. So, settle down, kiddies. But it's one of those movies where you can just quote forever and a month of Sundays. And one time I went to a Bucks party, which I organized for a mate of mine. We went go-kart racing, and it was in the outdoors in the rain. And we're actually sitting in the carts waiting for the carts to be started up. And all we were doing is just quoting Aliens quotes, as you do when you're sitting in a go-kart in the rain with nothing to do. So particularly groovy. Aliens is a horror movie. Aliens is an action flick. Well, it's a combination of a whole lot of things, but first and foremost, it's a science fiction movie, which is what we're here to discuss. So very, very groovy. I was referring to Alien, the first movie. Yeah. Very, very cool. Alien 3, yeah, we're not going to talk about Alien Cubed. Yes, it was just complete shit in comparison. So let's move on. Another movie that's ticked a lot of boxes for a lot of people, of course, is Back to the Future. Now, I'm just focusing on the first movie here. I don't know about you, but when I first saw this, I looked at it and I thought, you know what? Every single detail is important. Like, nothing's been put in by accident. Everything means something. And it's great when movies do that. And it was such a great story for people to dial into. And you go, you know what? Regardless of whether you can comprehend the going forwards in time, backwards in time, and all the rest of it, is just an ingenious concept, and the fact he drives a DeLorean is pretty handy. Of course, ironically, up to this point, most people have never even heard of a DeLorean, let alone seen one. And of course, that just put the cars back on the map, even though they'd stopped production a couple of years prior. But the chemistry between the two characters, Doc Brown and Marty, it was just magnificent. And it was just something you just could not fault. And the way they did the whole thing with going back in time, and he's sort of dealing with the paradoxes of that. It's certainly a film that, even though as a trilogy it worked really, really well, you can still say, if I only just saw the first movie, roads, where we're going, we don't need roads. You can just stop there and go, you know what? I'm just going to go to bed and sleep happily ever after. So absolutely love it. Party trick is knowing every single Space Marine's name without looking them up. Well, that's going to be next to impossible because a lot of them you didn't really sort of see. They did appear, I think, on screen when they're doing the camera thing, but a lot of them, they didn't have any lines. They didn't have any dialogue. So that's why I love the character Where's Bowski. As I said in the trivia quiz once before, is his name Where's Bowski, or is his name's Bowski and they just don't know where he is? So, but it's Where's Bowski, the character's name. So, yes. But if you do know them all, good for you, as nerdy as you may be. Aliens, it's fiction and there is science, alien research, terraforming. Well, yeah, that's a completely different story unto itself about how that would work. We've got a LV 426, as it were. Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, loved it. Absolutely loved it. Doc's mansion being destroyed in a fire and the newspaper clippings at the start didn't lead anywhere. Who knows, Alan? Maybe it was all a deleted scene later on and they made some changes along the way. But I did love the fact that just all the details were really, like when he's holding on to the fly and he's talking about when the clock had sort of been destroyed by the thunderstorm and all the rest of it. So absolutely love it, which is particularly groovy. Hang on, I just got to press a button here because here we go. Good stuff. So complete polar opposite in terms of good old Blade Runner. Back to the Future, starting with B, was Blade Runner. Now, when this came out in 82, this was something nobody saw coming. I mean, the style, the design, the look, the feel, it was almost very alien-esque, funnily enough, because they were both made by Ridley Scott. But it showed a future of the Earth that back in 82, we thought, that could never be possible. But these days, with the climate change and all the rest of it that's going on, you could almost argue that, we're sort of heading in that direction. And the whole film, as you know, is set at nighttime. It's always raining. It's always miserable. And there's like overpopulation and all the rest of it, because obviously all the healthy people have buggered off to the outer colonies. And even though it was a massive change of pace for Harrison Ford, who at that point had already done Han Solo and Indiana Jones, this was one movie that I thought, it's a different spin on how things are done cinematically, visually, regardless of whether you like the story, regardless if you like all the voiceovers, visually, you just couldn't knock it. And I think it polarized critics in many different ways. What does everybody else think about that? And while you're thinking about that, I'm just going to check a couple of messages here. I think once we burnt down his own house to get insurance the fourth time. That was Back to the Future. Yeah, got that. Blade Runner is very unappreciated when it came out. It was. And because you got to remember, by the time we got around to 1982, there was a lot of stuff coming out, right? And obviously E.T. is one of them, which we're going to be discussing in a moment. All these other movies, it was like a bombardment of sci-fi material. So audiences really were spoiled for choice. And I guess at that point, because of the nature of how Harrison Ford's movies had been, it was a massive readjustment as to understanding what was going on and what his character was doing and who he was. But when you look upon it, you can either say, you know what, that has really pushed my buttons and has worked for me, or you can go, nah, I don't like it. But I don't think people who didn't like it didn't know why they didn't like it. Does that make sense? So, but when you look at it, even like today, it just stands out. It's just absolutely spectacular. And for that reason, it deserves all the credits that is due to it. Gavin said he couldn't get into the Blade Runner sequel. Yeah, well, Blade Runner 2049 is a film unto itself. When you're standing on the shoulders of giants, I mean, it's a big ask to try and replicate that. And all things being equal, I think the sequel was actually pretty good. You could almost watch the sequel without even watching the original movie. But I think they complement each other well enough, despite the fact they were made decades apart. So, Blade Runner was a big. Philip K's dick stature is erotic. You're absolutely correct, because he did do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, which is what the film was based off. Even though the word Blade Runner was invented for the movie, it was not in the book. But I'm not entirely sure if Philip K. Dick himself actually appreciated it. But yes, indeed. Gavin has said, E.T. gets me every time I watch it over 500 times. My God, that's a lot of aliens action you got going on there. Close Encounters, funny. What? Funny off top. It always reminds me of Close Encounters. Funny about that. I'm not too sure which one. I'm a bit behind on the messages here, kids. So sorry about that, kid. Just having a look. Gets what? When I get to see the first time the film got jammed, we had to come back another. Oh yeah, don't you hate it when that happens? That happened to me during a Star Trek movie, Star Trek Generations, when the bird of prey decloaks with the Duras sisters on board, and just everybody goes, "Oh my god, it's the freaking Klingons!" The cinema, they had a bomb scare. We had to leave the cinema. So, yeah, know all about that. Another movie where the director's cut makes some more. Yeah, what's the problem with this particular film? Bladerunner got hammered by multiple edits, multiple cuts, multiple versions. And as most people will agree, if you've watched the original enough times, even if you watch a later version without the Harrison Ford voiceover, you still hear it in your head. You can't help it, right? It's just there. And even though in real life, Harrison Ford did not want to do it, he actually tried to record his audio as worst as possible, and they still put it in. So, yes, exactly right. Oh, my goodness. Our number one American fan has joined us. So all the way from good old America. Good on you, Mr. Floyd. Good for joining us. So, yeah, Claire saying hello as well, which is absolutely awesome. So, very, very groovy. But, yes, for those people who have never seen Blade Runner, and I don't think there's hardly anybody here, it's definitely something that holds up today. Now, this one's a personal favorite. Whether you like it or not, I don't give a rat's ass. It's good old Dunny. Now, at the very least, you have to acknowledge that they at least tried to make this big-ass movie from this big-ass book. And the biggest thing that killed it, without a doubt, is that you needed to have read the book to understand it, right? You start the movie, Princess Ulang comes at the start, rattles off all this exposition, and before the bloody thing has even got into the story, the audience has said, nah, I'm over it. I can't handle it, right? You got freaking Spice, you got bloody House Atreides, you got this freaking the Bene Gesserit and all this sort of shit, the Kwisatz Haderach. Never in a million years was that going to work. And that was really unfortunate because, in my opinion, the film is very, very faithful to the book in terms of an adaptation. So, but a lot of people couldn't get into it. I saw the movie. I loved it, but I couldn't understand it. Read the book, rewatched the movie, and here I am today, absolutely hooked on it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And even though the latest version has a lot going for it and is awesome in a lot of ways, there are still aspects of the 84 movie that are superior in terms of just detail and some of the characterization. So, yes, well worth checking out. But if you've never seen it and you're not interested, yeah, unfortunately, it's going to work against you. So what can you do? Aaron said, Harrison Ford can't do anything bad except rom-coms and flying planes, apparently, because he seems to crash those on a regular basis. So there you go. Relax, William. We're moving on, okay? You just got to deal it. Just he's off. Well, you're leaving the whole show. Go watch the Book of Boba Fett because that's definitely worth watching more than watching me. That's for sure. So it's worth noting that most quality 80s movies stand up pretty well. Most look dated or cheesy compared to. Yes, exactly right. The only thing that does kill them, as I said earlier, was the synthesized music. Synthesized music was a huge rage back in the 80s, and it does. Sometimes you just hear the first few bars and you go, it's synth music, bang, it's an 80s movie. So that is the one thing that does kill them. So at least if they're going to be using orchestral music, so obviously the John Williams material from a lot of movies, you're cooking on gas, and that doesn't date the movies, which is absolutely fantastic. And of course, that brings us to E.T. Now, I've got to be honest, E.T. wasn't my bread and butter, not my real cup of tea, but I can appreciate it because it must have been one of the first films, if not the first film, that had the alien coming to Earth, and he was a good dude. He wasn't here to blow the shit out of everybody and take people over and all the rest of it. There may have been, I have to use that term, other movies in the distant past that had a similar theme, but this is the one that really captured the heart of the audience. I mean, E.T., when it comes down to it, is a bit of a butt ugly character, but because he gets connected into with Elliot, that must have been just the first. Now, these days, of course, alien movies are everywhere. You know, aliens come down and they befriend people and all the rest of it, but you know, I think this may have been, as I said earlier, the first. And if it was, you can understand why the audience has dialed right into it. So instead of the alien connecting with an adult, it connects with a child. And of course, the child's sensibilities of being so innocent, it was an absolute no-brainer. And of course, I specifically remember in the cinema, because I was watching E.T. in the cinema, and at this point, I'm like 15 years old. And I'm getting it, but I'm not getting it. And when E.T. died, I mean, the whole audience is crying their eyes out, right? Bawling. And my mother was next to me. They're all crying like you wouldn't believe. And you're thinking, you know what? You know you've got an audience hooked when everybody is empathizing with what they're seeing on screen. And yeah, E.T. was ingenious. It really, really was. And I've got to say, you know, that's a movie that has survived very, very well from the 80s. Even though the 33rd anniversary edition, some wag had said, oh, no, we're not a fan of police holding guns anymore. We'll change them to walkie-talkies. And, of course, fans went up in arms over that. So, yes, don't dick around with movies from the past that have been massively successful. So, particularly groovy. Claire said you loved ET. And it's, you know what? You'd have to be a bit of an asshole to say, I reckon ET was shit. Because it's like, it just isn't, It's just, no. I think if someone says that, then the problem's actually with the person. So I totally agree with you, even though it wasn't my cup of tea, but I certainly got it. So Daniel's mentioned about the Toto music. Yes, exactly right. It was back then, for whatever reason, bands doing music for movies was a bit of a goer. So obviously Toto did June and Queen did Flash Gordon. And you hear the music, and even though you're waiting for the Rosanna song to pop up, the Toto music from June was absolutely spectacular. So Aaron said, with a Queen Eastleigh dated Flash Gordon, but after all came back into vogue. I don't know if it dated or not. It certainly put it on the map, that's for sure. So if you do wonder that, and we'll get to Flash Gordon later on, if they did actually use just generic music, would the film has been as successful as it was? So yes. Where are we? Walkie-talkie gun. Yeah, as I said, yeah, exactly right. Walkie-talkies for guns. And that's when you get the whole PC politically correct thing and just destroy something. You go, nah, don't do it. Takes the threat away. It doesn't work. David Lynch actually did shoot the whole book, but he had to cut it. Yeah, exactly right. So there are two versions of, there's actually three, but we'll stick with two versions of the June film. There is a 3-hour version, and there's a story I can tell you about how I was probably the only one in this entire country to actually have access to that 3-hour version back in the 1990s. I knew a friend over in America. She said it was on their Foxtel thing over there. She recorded it for me, sent it over the videotape over here. And as soon as I saw it directed by Alan Smithy, I thought, mate, I am the Kwisatz Haderach. I could be the only person in Australia who has a copy of the Alan Smithy version. And I'll tell you what, I had friends coming all out of the woodwork. Can I borrow it? Can I borrow it? Can I borrow it? Yeah, take a number, wait in the queue. Yeah, cute girls go first. So, yes, and now, of course, you can get on DVD, and it's quite groovy. But, yes, it was never going to be an easy film to make because of its length and its complexity. It was my moral duty to never see E.T. It's probably why you haven't seen June, Mr. William. Well, there you go, sir. It's entirely up to you, but you're not doing yourself any favours. But, each to their own. So if you choose not to watch it, that is entirely up to you. Same, except for dude to make sure I'm not too sure what that means. Adzi, you've lost me there. Joe said you saw ET when it first came out. Only watched it once. Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I don't make a point of watching it, but I thought I wanted to bring it up because it was such a successful movie, and of course, it was from the 80s, and that's really what put the movies on the map big time. But then I'll talk to you about another 80s 82 movie that came out in the same year. They had a complete polar opposite to the regarding the audience because of this movie ET. So. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay. Daniel said Queen did Highlander. Yeah, once they got into the soundtrack thing, they started rocking and rolling because they're a rock band. Yes, and they could do no wrong. Where are we? Another thing about 80s movies is that when the last time you saw them with shorts and cartoons. Yeah, well, I remember when I was trying to watch Star Wars and they were putting all these bloody shorts at the start. It's like, get on with the freaking movie. So, yes. Guy Thomas, Mac and Me was better than E.T. Maybe it was, but E.T. was first. So, you start with it's the old flattery is when you copy something else. And there you go. But most people, you actually remember seeing Mac and Me. So maybe it was better. But, it's always easy to improve on the original, but someone has to be first. And that's the key thing. All right. So this is a movie. There's a lot of comments coming through about the music. Sorry, Dags, my typing is... Yeah, so he's typing sums up more than usual tonight. Very good. Now, this one's a personal favorite. I love it when, filmmakers go a little bit left field. Of course, it was Escape from New York, right? Awesome. The idea that they've imprisoned Manhattan Island, chucked all the bad dudes in there and said, all right, kiddies, off you go. And, of course, the funny thing is, look, it's set in 1997. And you do wonder about, they could have set it another 20 or 30 years after that, which is, pretty much today. But this was a great film. And... those who love the old Snake Plissken, because everybody thought he was dead, chuck him in there. He's got to get the president out before the time expires. Sure, it's a little bit different. And forget Escape from LA, just stick with the original movie. It's a dystopian film, but it's sort of just touched on very, very briefly. He's the war hero. They chuck him in there with Lee Van Cleef, who's the arsehole in this particular movie. And yes, you can't say no. And of course, the production design is fantastic. And you do wonder that if you had an environment where you put all the bad dudes together in one place and they've got to build their own world, what do they come up with? And as you can see, it just goes completely to the shithouse. So yeah, this is definitely one movie that well worth checking out if you haven't seen it. Escape from New York. Yes, exactly right. Call me Snake. And of course, he plays almost the same character in The Thing, and we'll get to The Thing a bit later on, which is particularly groovy. Yes, exactly. I thought you were dead. Yes. See, the lines are fantastic. Escape from New York. And for those who didn't pick up on it, in the poster where you've got the Statue of Liberty's head, that actually ended up being inspired for Cloverfield. So if you've seen the movie Cloverfield, the Statue of Liberty's head rolls down the street and sits in the middle of the street, and people come out with their cameras and phones and shit. And that's actually directly inspired from this poster, because they said, how grouse is that? The Statue of Liberty's head, which Charlton Heston won't see in Planet of the Apes, ends up in the middle of a city street. Absolutely fantastic. So yes, well worth checking out if you haven't done so. Or Escape from New York has something for everyone. I totally agree with you on that one. So yes. And that was made in 1981. So that's what, 41 years. Oh my God, 41 years. I just realized E.T. this year is 40 years old. Holy golly, where's that time gone? Absolutely insane. Philip, we got a good Philip all slipped on in here. It is like one of his wife's favorites too. And Guy has said one of the best love. Escape from New York, not a bad sequel. Yeah, as I said, Escape from LA was, take it or leave it, but you can't say nothing wrong about this movie. How gross is that? Very close. How gross is that? Is very close. I know. I'm trying not to say it, but I can't help myself because I'm excited. Very, very groovy. See, I've just done it then. So, Flash Gordon, yay team, right? So from all the darkness of the 70s and the miserableness, we get to 1980, and it's just nothing but color. Okay, you got reds and golds and greens, and you got the Queen music, as we said earlier. Go Flash, go! And I saw this. At this point, I would have been 13 years old, and I thought, mate, this is grouse. And I loved Clytus. Clytus was awesome. And you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who is of my vintage to say, yeah, Flash Gordon was tripe, because it was grouse. And, of course, the funny thing about it is that Sam Jones, who played Flash, in real life wasn't blonde, so that's the colour of his hair. And, of course, his voice has been redubbed because there was a huge fallout between him and the production company. He bailed out, and they needed to overdub his voice, so they just brought someone else in. I don't even know who that person even was. So it's, yes, exactly right. William Fowler. William didn't leave us to see the Book of Boba Fett. He's still sticking around. Go, Flash, go. Absolutely, yes. War Rocket Ajax to bring back his body. So, and this is where I think you got to, like, at the start of the movie when they're doing the opening credits, right? This is like leading into the future. They have the comic book pages flicking through, which is what all the Marvel movies do these days. But this thing, I think, started it. So you look at Flash and then go like flashing through all the Flash comic panels. And you go, they do that today in the Marvel intros. So the fact that they did it here first, 42 years ago now, is really, really grouse. Yeah, I'm going to say it now. So, yes, Floyd is a top 10 all-time favorite. It is such good repeat watching value. I love it. And just the color. I mean, I can't imagine seeing it on like a 4K TV or something like that. It must be absolutely spectacular. Blu-ray, high def, the whole business. And yes. And of course, you got Timothy Dalton playing Prince Baron. And he looks exactly the same as he does in James Bond, which he did a few years later. And I love the idea that they had different colored blood for different people. So if you remember, I think Ming's blood is blue. Prince Thun's blood is green. And that way you can have as much of this stuff everywhere. The guys from, actually Barron's was red, but the other guys from Aboya were green, if I recall, because he gets bitten by the thing. So, but the fact that you have different colored blood was very, very clever, because then, of course, you don't worry about grossing out the entire audience. So there we go. Hang on. Yeah, Gordon's alive. You did the quotes. How can you not do the quotes? Yes, worth it for Melody Anderson, of course. Yes, for a day. Gail Arden, Your Highness, live and let live. That's my motto. You can't knock the quotes, which is particularly grooving. What do you mean, Flash Gordon approaching on a Hawkman rocket cycle? Yes, good stuff. And Max von Sydow as Ming the Merciless was spectacular. He really tried to emulate the original version from the 30s, and I think he nailed it really, really well. So, yes, good stuff. A good film where she was just so cute. Yeah, well, exactly right. So, I mean, it was done by Dino De Laurentiis. They realised that attractive women sort of sell movies, and of course you had Princess Aura and all the rest of it. So yes, don't when in doubt, kids, go and fetch the ball worms. No, not the ball worm. Here we go. Dags World Fun Factoid. The artist who did the movie Comic Dutcher with a huge had the company touches, so he did the okay, well there you go. You learn something new every day, and not necessarily from me. You'll actually learn it from other people watching this show. Very, very groovy. So we move on a couple of years, and of course, when this came out, and I've got a funny story to tell you about this one too, set the world on fire. The good old last strobe lighter, good old last Starfighter. Visual effects done digitally. How radical is that? Who knew where that would lead X amount of years later now? Like, you know, throughout the 90s and the 2000s, just about everything visual effects-wise has been done digitally. But this was like the leading edge at the time. And even though it's unbelievably dated, you couldn't knock it at the time. It was like, wow, this is really cool, really different. And I think everybody actually said, oh, they'd love to be a Starfighter if they could. It's got some really, really good music, some excellent scenes. I love the bad dude at the bottom. I've forgotten his name. He's one of his last lines. When the ship's blowing up, what do we do now? And he's like, eyepiece that comes across. A meaningless plastic thing that's transparent says, we die. Absolutely love it. How could you not knock that? One of my favorite movies. And of course, the whole thing of Death Blossom, when the thing's spinning around. I mean, you would lose your lunch when that would happen. It's just like I'm spinning around, shooting all the bad dudes. Good old Zua and the Kodan Armada. Oh, love it. So, yes, exactly right, Mr. Ange. How could you not put this in? So I'll tell you a funny story. I was going out on a date with a girl for this. And as it turned out, I had to finish work. I had to rush into town in PT because obviously I was like still a teenager. And I turn up. She's at the front waiting for me. I get there. I turn up and I'm sweating like you wouldn't believe. And I'm, hot and I'm stinking and all the rest of it. It's like, hi, honey, how are you? How are you going? Needless to say, it wasn't a very successful date, but I did the best I could regarding that. Here we go. Hang on. Well, sorry, guys. Said probably my favorite sci-fi movie of all time. One of them comes on TV. I had to drop everything and watch. You know what? I get it. I really, really do. It was a feel-good story. And sorry to say this, kids. And I've forgotten his brother's name. Alex Rogan's brother. He has the Playboy under the thing, and he's opened them up. And I actually had that Playboy issue that he had under the bed. Oh, God. Yay, team. Yes, exactly right, Daniel. Greetings, Starfighter. You've been recruited by the Star League. And how many people thought, where's that game? Oh, my God, I want to go and play the last Starfighter like stand-up game. And, of course, it didn't exist. So, yay. Which chick was that, Dags? I shall tell you later on. So, yes, very, very good. It was my last Starfighter. Oh, I felt shit out. So I turned up and I was hot and sweaty and all the... Oh, it just wasn't very, very cool. So, thank you, Lewis. Absolutely, yeah. So when he goes, oh, mama, yeah, I had that issue too. So anyway, what can I say? I was a teenager. You got to cut me some slack, all right? So just be wary of that. Yes, I date a lot, Dags. Well, yeah, it's this. I don't know. It's back in the day. So you got to remember, at this point, I'm a part of fandom. I'm a part of the fan community. So I was mixing it with everybody, which is particularly groovy. Now, this one, not everybody went for it, right? Me personally, I said, mate, this is grouse. Masters of the Universe. Loved it. And of course, this was made by the Canon Group, the Golan and Globus guys from Israel. And they were churning out movies left, right, and center back in the 80s. They were the go-to people for weird and wacky shit. And they made this movie. And even though Dolph Lundgren couldn't act to save his life at this point, he had a dialogue coach and a drama coach and just about everything coach. It was all worth it as far as I was concerned for Skeletor. And even though he looked nothing like the toys, he didn't look anything like the cartoons, I didn't care. I really dialed into this. It worked for me. It pushed all these buttons, and Skeletor was spectacular. And even today, I still got to say, you know what? I'm a big fan of Masters of the Universe. And even though Gwildor is a bit of a pain in the ass, and the four mercenaries are kind of useless, it worked for me. And yes, it's got a lot. I've got a lot of passion for good old Masters of the Universe. Even though devotees of He-Man go, it's complete shit, but I don't care. So there you go. Well, the only games that Dags recruited by was Leisure's Little Larry. Oh, goodness gracious me. So, Claire still hasn't seen Master Universe. You know what? It doesn't really matter if you have or you haven't. It is dated now by a long shot. And some of the hero stuff is a bit corny and a bit stupid, and some of the visual effects is a bit dumb. But as I said, it was mainly the Skeletor thing. Sure, he was a bit of a megalomaniac, but his connection with Evil Lynn was really, really good, and it just pushed a lot of buttons from my perspective. So, and because I didn't know anything about He-Man, I was completely just coming into it from an outsider. And yes, William. And in fact, when Frank Langella got the role of Skeletor, because he didn't know anything about He-Man either, he just walked straight into his kid's bedroom. He said, "All right, kids, tell me about Skeletor." Rest is history. So, yes. You're right, Ange. Tom Paris and Courtney Cox were both in this. So before she went to Friends and before Tom Paris ended up being Tom Paris, a bit of Robbie's ribs. You can't knock a bit of Robbie's ribs, if you know what I mean. So, yes. A guy said, I saw it years ago. Don't remember as a kid. A kid again, love Master Universe. I can still watch it today, even though Bill Conti did the music. And, of course, he's famous for doing the music for Rocky. And, unfortunately, the Masters soundtrack probably isn't the greatest thing of all time. But, it was great. Glenn says, I have the power. Yeah, well, that's the thing. One of the funniest lines, of course, is they land on contemporary Earth and they've lost the cosmic key, right, which is what Gwildor built. And poor old Dolph was running around going, the cosmic key. I'm looking for the cosmic keys. Anybody seen the cosmic key? Oh, shithouse dialogue, but, it is what it is. And the guy who plays the school headmaster from Back to the Future, the bald guy, right, he plays in Master Universe exactly the same character. Instead of being a bitchy or a bastardy high school dude, he's actually a bitchy bastardy police officer. And I was like, he's just the same. He looks exactly the same. He dresses the same, and he acts the same. And I thought that was quite funny. And of course, it had the ultimate gag of all time. All of Skeletor's forces turn up into this town at night time. There's millions of dudes everywhere, and there's not a single person out on the street who sees them. So obviously, the COVID curfew was in effect at that point, because once they've taken off back to Eternia, then the police roll up and go, where was everything? Oh, gotta love it. Very, very cool. It was dated before it came out. Well, I suppose it was too. So, and I agree. Meg Foster was awesome as Evil Lynn. They didn't have to put contact lenses in her either, because her eyes are just naturally an unusual color. But there's a moment between her and Skeletor which was really good. If you could build on that, their relationship would have been fantastic, but was not to be. And Andrew said Meg Foster was good and everything. Yeah, exactly right. And you're right. Yeah, Gwildor was originally supposed to be Orko, and they said, nah, as Orko was just too hard to do. So Gwildor it was to be. Now, this is a very significant film that came out. And even though it is not an 80s movie, it was adapted for an 80s movie. And it's the Giorgio Moroder version of Metropolis. And the reason why this for me is a big deal, it's the first time I ever saw a silent movie. And I'd never experienced one before. And even though they modernized it a little bit, they had to put, they didn't color it, but they tinted it, put in the rock music and all the rest of it. And to be fair, I mean, it was very, very short. They didn't have all the footage. It got me into silent movies and into Metropolis specifically. And even though a lot of people thought, oh, it's like a complete bastardization of the entire production of the original Fritz Lang production, it worked for me because I thought, okay, I need to sort of see this. The music really supported the story, and it was fantastic. And so I don't know if people out there saw Metropolis or remember it, this version in particular. Now, of course, there are other versions of Metropolis that have come out, but this got me into silent movies, and I really loved it, and it's fantastic. And the soundtrack is awesome, even though every song is depressing. Because the film is depressing, but it's something that I wanted to put that in because when that came on, I go, oh my God, this is grouse. I'd heard of Metropolis, you know what people like back then. I'm a kid back then in 1984. I'm not even like 17 or 18. Go, silent movies, you're going to watch those. Saw this and go, yep, done, I'm hooked. So, and I've become a huge Metropolis fan ever since, which is groovy. Yes. So, yes, if you haven't had a chance, check it out. All right, now this one's a little bit left field. Not everybody would have seen this when it came out, but it really, really pushed my buttons. Of course, was Outland. And this featured Sean Connery on a mining outpost on Io, if I recall correctly. And there's a whole conspiracy going on with drugs and murders and all the rest of it. And even though you could set this anywhere, the fact that they're located, like you could even do it like an oil rig thing out in the ocean. It worked. I really liked this. It was just a real cops and robbers sort of story set at a base on IO, and it just worked for me. So this is something a little bit different from Sean Connery's James Bond material, but it was a good story, and I haven't seen it for a very, very long time. But if you like something a little bit dark, a little bit different, and it does show that if you're on an outpost, in a mining outpost, it's not all going to be pristine and pretty and gleaming and all the rest of it. It's going to be dark. It's going to be dreary and dull and all the rest of it. And like even there's a bar there, and even the guy says, you know, he doesn't always water down his whiskey. And some of the girls who work there are actually pretty and all the rest of it. So if you want to see Sean Connery do something a little different, I loved it. I thought I was a big fan of Outland, and although a lot of people probably have not watched it. Where are we? Outland was really out there. Well, it was on the moon of Ion, as you can see from the footage. It looks fantastic. Yeah, good on you, Ange. Yep, Outland was awesome, and something that a little bit different, which is groovy. Hang on. The Vile has said, I never wanted to see this Metropolis. Yeah, look, it's you have to readjust your thinking. If you've seen other versions of Metropolis, then you're right. Seeing the Giorgio Moroder version will grate on you a little bit. But if you're prepared to give it a go, and it's just worth it for the songs, and there is some subtle sound effects, so they didn't really bastardize the entire thing, and they had to change the intertitles and whatever else. It's a good introduction to silent movies, and that's why they did it. They said, okay, we've got the footage, let's just modernize it for an audience, for people who will not watch silent movies these days. Young people won't even watch black and white movies. So it was a good step in the right direction, and for that reason, I applaud it deeply, which is grouse. Where are we? Inga. Look, to see Inga joining the show. I remember seeing Outland as a blast. It is a blast from the past. That's what's so cool about it. So, and in fact, it is now 42 years old. So, how grouse is that? Based on a High Noon Western, it is, and it works. It really, really does work. The Vile has said it's on the Vile's must-see list. Well, yes, it definitely is at that. Now, this is one movie when it came out, I turned 20, right? In 1987, I turned 20. I even got the R-rated version to show at my own 21st birthday, because I said, I got it on videotape. I said, I want to watch this. Stuck it on in the middle of the party. I'm usually a rage without videos kind of dude, but I said, I've got to see it, and I loved it. Good old Robocop. How awesome was this movie when it first came out? Part man, part machine, all cop. Absolutely awesome. As violent as they come, even though the theatrical version, they had to tone down the violence, take out the swearing, which did not work. Once called him Airhead, all this sort of business. But the rated R version came out for my birthday. I got the videotape, as I said, put it on a party. And it's like, forget the sequels, forget the remakes, stick with the original. And it is just a magnificent movie. And you got to admit, in the sequence when they're like, all the police turn against him and they're blowing the shit out of the poor bastard, his leg breaks and all the rest of it, you go, oh my God, what are you guys doing? He's there to help you. So, yeah, and then, of course, when he takes his helmet off later on, and you look at Peter Weller's face and the way it's been melded into the machinery, you go, that is freaking grouse. It's like, how do they do that? So, yeah, totally agree with you. Peter Weller is so cool, perfect for it. Okay, so there you go. And I've got to watch a bit of the old TJ Laser. It's a bit of a shame that TV show never came out. So, yes, dead or alive, you're coming with me. See, all the quotes come in. Okay, you've got to absolutely love that. And if you're clever, you'll know the three prime directives. I'm sure the fourth is classified. Uphold serve the public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law. Oh, nerd! And of course, that's what we're doing tonight, which is very, very groovy. So there you go. So we're just going back to Outland. The scene where the guy goes there, look, without a suit. Well, exactly right. That's in Outland, and of course, that's the thing. They're dealing drugs on the station, and it causes a few people go radio rental and they die, and that's the reason why Sean Connery's got to investigate what's going on with that. Ed 209 was crap. At the time, it was not. At the time, it was magnificent, right? And now, sure, it's stop motion animation and all the rest of it, but it worked for what it was meant to be. Sure, there was a few sequences when he falls down the stairs is a bit wanky, but that just goes to show how there was a design flaw with Ed 209 from the beginning. It was meant to be this big-ass military application thing, but it couldn't walk downstairs because it was a design oversight. And that was part of the whole thing with the story. So there were aspects of the movie that worked really well. So yeah, by today's standards, yeah, you can look at Ed 209 and go, mate, that's complete rubbish. But at then in the cinema, you go, oh, yeah, exactly right. Yeah, please move your car. You have 20 seconds to comply. I'm now authorized to use physical force. If you ever watch the R-rated version where he absolutely shoots the shit out of the dude in the room and blows him out the windows, oh, and he lands on the model, his body parts going everywhere. Oh, loved it. That was my 21st birthday. Yay, team. Come quietly or there will be trouble. See, there's no end of dialogue and quotes you can quote for this. Sounds like the Daleks. Oh, no, start. Good old Claire. I expect Aaron to bring up all the Doctor Who references in this particular show. So there you go. Yes, exactly right. Your move, creep. Yes. Very, very groovy. Gavin said ATSTs work better. They used a different visual effects technique for ATSTs, but I'm not talking about Return of the Jedi. We're talking about a Robocop. Speaking of things that are cool, big, and just blowing the shit out of stuff, good old Predator. So this comes out. Get to go and say. I bet everybody's going to say, "Get to the chopper." What an interesting sort of concept this movie was. It could have been any other story. I mean, everything was going on with the Rambos of the world and the missing in actions and all the rest of it, which were made by the Canon Group. And then they do this version. We go, well, okay, let's have our big ass dude fighting against an alien, mate, and a nasty alien at that. And ironically, when they did Die Hard, the movies later on, with John McClane, they said they wanted someone who's a complete opposite to Arnold and Sylvester and Chuck Norris and that. They wanted a skinny, weedy dude because all these guys had just been like the superheroes, if you will, for the 1980s. And of course, I don't know if you guys knew this, but with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers, they used to do workouts at 3 a.m, just to pump themselves up for the filming. So, but everybody loved Predator when it came out. And of course, the Predator himself has become a legendary, infamous bad guy. So, yes, exactly right, Mr. Michael. If it bleeds, we can kill it. There's a lot of good stuff that goes with this film. And I think, if anything, you could just get to the last bit with the big fight scene between the Predator and Arnold's character, whose name I've completely forgotten. Just know it's going to be cooking on gas. So, yeah, there's all these. Yeah, ain't got no time to bleed. That's some wanky stuff, wasn't it? Oh, you gotta love it. Very, very groovy. Hang on, what's this? Well, you'd have to laugh when they were writing the script. I bet no one gets the back where to get to the chopper. See, if he didn't have the accent, Arnold didn't have the accent, that line would be meaningless. But because he's got the Austrian accent, it just works so well. So there you go. Can't say a bad thing about the original Predator. I totally agree with you. It's got everything working for it. The mystery, the unknown factor. It's like Alien, but in the jungle. But the fact that there is a jungle going on and you're not too sure what's happening, it ticks all the boxes. And of course, thank you, Daniel Dutch. And then, even if you never watch the sequels, just stick with the one movie. You can't go wrong. So, absolutely love it. All right, let's go to wind the clock back to 1980. Now, this is once again a sequel to a movie that came out, and I go, oh man, how grouse was this? Of course, it was Superman 2. Now, of course, there's a couple of versions of this particular movie. The 3-hour version is really quite interesting, but Superman 2 was awesome, primarily because the antagonists, the bad guys, were badass. So in the original movie, it was Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor was just a dude with a couple of missiles, all right? Also, I'm not having anything bad to say about Superman, the movie. It was a fantastic film. But in this movie, Superman's got 3 bad guys who are just as strong as him. And they're kicking his ass from here to Christmas. And it was like, I saw this in the cinema and go, freaking hell, this is grouse. And the fact that it linked to the first movie with the guy stuck in the Phantom Zone, magnificent. And, when you got the module, the rocket ship module on the moon, and just gone blank. Sarah Douglas's character comes up and rips it. Who are you? He just says, "I'm a man." Just a man. And nobody saw that sort of coming. And I've got to say that was just fantastic. Yes, Neil Dezod, very good stuff. So love it. So Superman 2 was a fantastic sequel. And you're right, Colin. It's the ultimate joke at Planet Houston. Yes. Well worth checking it out. Even though they went ahead and did the Richard Donner cut many years later because of fan pressure, ultimately it was like, you know what, the Richard Lester version still works, and I think this is the best of the two. So you got to love it. Inga says, I love Christopher Reeve, a fangirl. But you know what? He was even today, he's still the best Superman that there has been, and there's no denying that at all. Good stuff. Just the man with a man's courage. You got your movies mixed up, old son, but that's groovy. All right, now this one was completely left field. A remake of a movie made in the 50s. Not everybody's cup of tea, but I got to admit, I liked it. And of course, it was The Fly. Gruesome on all levels. Not one for the kids. And if you're ever wondering, hey, he had 2 baboons. One kind of didn't end well in the teleporter. What happened to the other one? Don't ask. Just move on from that. But I love the style of the design. When the poster here with the leg here, the fly leg, and his human arm out there. And of course, I understand that the actual teleporter was based on an engine for a Ducati motorcycle. So it was interesting to show a bit of nastiness in the film business. And as I said, it didn't work for everybody. I mean, the whole business, when she gives birth to a maggot, okay, fair enough. That's probably pushing the boundaries. And the makeup effects, really full on, and he's pulling out his own fingernails and all sort of business. Very, very gruesome. But if you could handle all that, it was a grouse movie. I loved it. It was a very good story to say what happens to a person when they've been put into this situation, so he's like genetically connected with the fly, his whole life is falling apart. What do you do? What happens? And because I thought the original Fly was fantastic. It's like, how do you deal with this particular issue? And of course, he's trying to deal with it as well, thinking of all these crazy ways to try and get himself fixed, and none of them are working. So, and of course, he hooked up with Jenna Davis during this production. They became a couple, and you can see in their chemistry, it worked really, really well. So, but not for the faint-hearted, and just stick with the first movie. Don't worry about The Fly 2. And you're right, Claire. I can understand that. It is not everybody's cup of tea. So, yes. Not for good for the kids and not for the ads. Yes, I'm not. Yes, totally agree. Be afraid. We're very afraid. Yes, that was a great catch line, actually, I've got to say. Greg said, oh, good. Greg's joined us. I love The Fly. Yes, it's something for everyone, you could say. He went to the same skin scare as Baron Harkonnen. That's the 84 version of the Baron, I've got to say. Now we're getting into this really, really meaty stuff. And of course, 80s movies, there are so many to pick from. And of course, you can't knock the old Terminator, right? There's been a million Terminator movies since this. The first one, right? He just absolutely will not stop until he knocks off Sarah Connor. And the moment he's sort of like destroyed on the truck and he comes out as the endoskeleton, he's like, oh, that is awesome. Like, how do you stop this thing? And it's, once again, the first time you sort of see these kind of movies and they just branch out and just keep going. And they come up with all these great ideas and you go, you know what, this is where it all started. And Arnold, ironically, even though he would have said get to the chopper and Predator, in this film, he was spectacular. He worked really, really well. So it was, I don't know, it was just the right place at the right time with the right people. And it was just one of those movies you could not knock. So yes. Read the original Fly. I'm surprised it wasn't over Voyage at the Bottom of the Sea Company. Yeah, well, there you go. And yes, so I think it'd be hard pressed for anybody to say. Now, Terminator 2, which came out, I think, in 1991, I think surpassed this movie on a long ways. But they were both made by the same guy, James Cameron. But Terminator, just to kick off the franchise, was the way to go. And it was good to see that he was virtually unstoppable. It was just something he didn't expect. And it worked really, really cool. I like this one. You get to the motorcycle. Yes, very, very groovy. So you've got to check it out if you haven't done so already. All right, now we're heading towards the end of the nearly 9 o'clock. Bloody hell. This one is, if you didn't like The Fly, you definitely wouldn't have watched this. We'd mentioned earlier when E.T. came out in 1982, it was the big hit movie of the planet. Everybody loved E.T. On the opposite end of the spectrum was a film that came out and people said, nah, I ain't watching that because I'm used to seeing cuddly aliens. When you start bringing in The Thing, he's taking over dudes and they're ripping apart. And there's body parts everywhere and there's claret all over the place. That isn't kind of got to work yet. Ironically, I would argue that as the decades have gone past, because once again, this film is also 40 years old, it has just a bigger fan following, if not more, than E.T. Because The Thing just came out at the wrong time. Everybody loved E.T. But The Thing was such a good, scary movie. And it was scary because unlike in the original 1950s version where The Thing is just the dude in a suit, this thing, it was tearing dudes apart and they didn't know who was who in the zoo. All these guys stuck in the Antarctic station, Outpost 31, for those who love their trivia, could do no wrong. And it really was a case of what is going to happen? How is this going to work? And this thing, and there's the thing popped up when you least expect it. So if you love a little bit of tension, a little bit of stress, a little bit of the paranoia, the claustrophobia, but you can handle a bit of gruesomeness, The Thing was the go-to movie. So of E.T. and The Thing takes my vote any day of the week. And Aaron said The Thing, one of my favorite movies ever. And to be fair, the film that came out in 2011, the prequel to this, was great as well. Absolutely loved it. So you've got to check it out. Yes, The Thing was worth watching. It is one of those movies you see it in the cinema and you go, oh my God, when the dog's head splits open, you go, far out. Where are we going with this? The banana thing. Even in high school, I remember a school teacher saying, I went and saw The Thing and the freaking dog's head splits open like a banana. I go, freaking hell, what's the deal with that? So, no other film, I think, was ever like that at this point in time. And I got to applaud him for it. Magnificent. John Carpenter at his best. Oh, yeah, he was just the guy to go to for really, really cool stuff. Just don't take in stray dogs. Love it. So there you go. Rusky Babes said, must have spent a fortune seeing things at the movies back then. Well, of course, back then, that was the only way to see them, in that cinema. So yes, beautifully grotesque. I totally agree, because even though some people said, oh, it's way too violent, way too nasty, I said it's all justified. It works for the story. It is not gruesome for the sake of being gruesome. The thing is trying to survive and replicate itself, and it just happens to do it in a very, very nasty manner. So yeah, fantastic. But it's not for everybody, as we said earlier. If you're not a fan of The Fly, the thing probably won't be your cup of tea either, but it's well worth checking out. One of those movies, put your phone down, turn all the lights off, get the sound cranked up, and just watch it. Don't be distracted by anything else. So yes, good stuff. The effects they're still, even today, they still work, because they're all practical effects. There was no like model work, and there was no digital work, obviously, back then. It was all practical. Rob Bottin, or Botin, I think he pronounced his name, was just magnificent. So yes, check it out if you haven't done so already. On a completely unrelated note, 1982, as I said, all these things are coming out. You got the ET, you got the Thing. It's like, mate, there's movies popping out left, right, and center. This one, as 15 years old, I saw this and I literally lost my load. Tron, the original Tron, right? How awesome was this film? You go and sit in the cinema, you got the whole thing with the light cycle and the digital world, and you go, this is freaking grouse. It doesn't matter if the story's a bit on the weak side. Visually, you couldn't beat it. And I found when this film was being rated in the books, the Leonard Maltin Movie Guide and whatever else, they always had to give it 2 ratings, because they said visually it is stunning. It is like something you have never, ever seen before. Remember I said to you, at some point, you've got to have a first. Something has to be first. And this was the first to look like this. And of course, they had to rate it as far as the story. So usually rated poorly on the storyline, but really, really high on the visual line. And just the style, the look, the feel, not just with the light cycles, but with the recognizers and the tanks. And it was like, that is just, it's visually stunning. And I remember seeing this in the cinema going, oh, magnificent. And of course, we had never seen anything like it. So you've got to check it out. It's got everything, and David Warner exactly right. Good old Sark, which is, yes, it's actually Master Control Program. So yeah, and it's all, and this is actually before computers became a thing. So these days, of course, everybody's got freaking computers. The technology rules the universe. So if anything, Tron was almost like predicting what the future was going to be like, and about how technology dominates everything. And of course, the gaming industry is so gigantic now. And of course, in this point, home gaming systems didn't exist. It was all on arcades. And of course, arcades are pretty much a dead thing. But gaming is so big. So you do wonder, inside the machines with all the world that exists, what would actually that be like? And Tron was just spectacular on a lot of levels. I've known people to say they didn't like it, they didn't work for them. I thought, if you're looking at it through 15-year-old eyes in the cinema, it was just perfection. Exactly right. Oh, Jeffro! Tron sucked. Good on you. Yes, and particularly good stuff. Where are we? Light cycles kick out. Yeah, they do. Exactly right. Lights. Oh, what? And the idea that they could produce the wall, and because that's how you trap the bad guys. Oh, magnificent. And even Blender said the same thing. I agree with you, Grant. Tron Legacy was a fantastic sequel. There are some movies that have awesome sequels. Tron Legacy was definitely that, no denying. Good stuff. Look, this one, Tony Sark. Yeah, good on you. Good stuff. Yes. Now, where are we? All right. Now, I need to have a drink. Oh my God, I've been talking for an hour. Shit. And I haven't got the trivia. I've got a trivia quiz for you tonight too, guys, if you're interested. So, multiple choice, by the way. I thought I'd just chuck that in. Okay. So, there's one series of movies I have not touched on at all, and I wanted to bring them up. And of course, that was the Star Trek films. I mean, there's a lot you can discuss regarding this, but Star Trek, the movies, absolutely came into their own in the 80s, starting with the Wrath of Khan. After the poor disappointment of the motion picture, Wrath of Khan comes out. Oh my God, the whole world just goes completely apeshit for it. Then you got The Search for Spock, which I actually saw with the Austrek fan club when it premiered in 1984. The Voyage Home, mate, having a whale of a time with the Voyage Home, and of course The Final Frontier, which I actually did like. So there you go. I know a lot of people say it's one of the weaker ones, but all things being equal, it does have a lot of really good stuff. We're going to have a long conversation about the Star Trek films, but it would be too long actually. But ultimately, it really did put Star Trek on the map in a big way, and I think it's one of the reasons why the Next Generation TV series got created, because there was a huge audience for Star Trek at this point, and for the most part, it worked really, really well. They were great movies. They were entertaining. They brought in the crowds. They brought in the fans, and then it just led into what was going to be the new series. So, I mean, you could take guesses as to who likes what. Most fans out of these four love the Wrath of Khan. Most outsiders, non-fans, obviously go for Voyage Home because they can relate to it with the whales. And there's a lot going for them at the time. And being a part of the fan club, and I got to see the last 3 movies, Search for Spock, Voyage Home, and Final Frontier with the fan clubs, you couldn't beat it. And a lot of people really dialed into it. So Star Trek, in its own way, came to its own at this particular point in time. So everybody will have different memories about what they felt when they first saw the Star Trek films. And, of course, with Wrath of Khan being the continuation of Space Seed, the episode from the original series, was magnificent. So really, it could do no wrong, and it was good to see that things worked out as well as they did. Where are we? Want to invoke logic clearly. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one, as it were. So, yes, Final Frontier has fart jokes. Love it. God, good on you. Trust you to bring that up. Voyage Home isn't directly how I got to meet. Yeah, well, exactly right, because Rusky Bays and I were hanging out in the Star Trek fan club back then, and you got to love it. So, what does God need with a starship? That is a very, very good question. And yeah, good on you, Floyd. Come on, yeah. Absolutely magnificent. Believe it or not, I'm almost at the end of the presentation. There's this one I want to chuck in. There we go. What does Dags need with another Facebook show? That's grouse. Love Star Trek and all the spin-offs. Yes, the films were just great, and you saw them in the cinemas. Yeah, you loved it. So you could not do any wrong. Now, this one I'm going to chuck in at. If you've seen this, and William may have, because he just has about seen everything, I'll be very, very impressed. I only ever saw, I got some beta video, can you believe it? It was actually called The Invasion Earth. The aliens are here, completely independent. Most people have never heard of it. The gag of this particular movie is like, instead of filming all this brand new footage, right, the aliens take over a little cinema in some kind of hick town in America. And while they're trying to capture all the people and turning them into pods, they just show them 1950 sci-fi movies, the real thing. And it's just like a montage of all these films from the 1950s shown on the cinema screen. And while the audience is completely engaged watching these things, these aliens take them over. Invasion Earth, the aliens are here. It doesn't exist on Wikipedia. You can't even get a copy of it anywhere. But I've got to say, if you ever wanted to see a lot of footage from a lot of movies, and it was almost like a who's who in the zoo of what movie it was, Invasion Earth, you had to check it out. So, yeah, exactly. Nope. Yeah. Rusky Bays, yep, he had that. I even made a music video clip out of it one time. Seen it, love it. It is great. So there you go. Oh, William, well done. He has seen it. Invasion Earth, the aliens are here. Completely left field. It showed trailers from old movies. That's exactly right. So if you can't afford to film your own footage, just steal footage from all these other movies instead. So you got to say, how grouse is that? Now, it is now just after 9 o'clock right now. I've got a few other things I could show, which are my bonus ones, or without making this thing drag on too long, if you want, I can go to the trivia quiz. And while I take a drink, you tell me which one you'd like to go with. Nothing like classic water to wet one's whistle. So, all right, I'll go to the trivia quiz because I don't want to sort of spend all night here. So what we have is, yeah, thanks, Colin. Awesome. There we go. That's all I needed to hear. 9 o'clock, the witching hour. Yeah, exactly right. So, here we go. Quiz, both. Okay, well, I'll just do the trivia quiz and we'll see how we're going afterwards and keep going. Oh, I'm still going. Yep, yay, team. Let's have the extended special. Expansion edition. Oh, no. Inga said want the trivia. It's all good. This is multi-choice, right? We just do it shits and giggles. Right. So, it is the El Cheapo Quickie Trivia Quiz. And the theme, of course, is 1980s movie special. Now, it's multi-choice, right? You don't have to be an expert in any of this stuff. Shits and giggles, right? Now, if you're wondering, what do you win if you get them all right? The first prize is a night out with me. And the second prize is 2 nights out with me. I love that joke. Each question, there's 10 questions for each year of the 1980s. It's a bit of shits and giggles. Post your answers up on the thing. I'm not checking them. It's just for a bit of laughs, right? So we'll see what it's all about. No Googling, no cheating. Either you know it or you don't know it, right? And we'll see how everybody goes. All right, so you're ready for a bit of 80s movie trivia? Yay, team, on a Wednesday night when you should be watching the Book of Boba Fett. All right, where we go. Oh, look at this. Aaron said a gift voucher from Aaron's Collectibles. I love it. In fact, this trivia quiz is going to be so bad, you'll actually be giving him money just to sort of shut me up. So there you go. Yay, team. Oh, my God. William's buggering off. Something going on outside. Back shortly. Okay, we'll just put some whole music on, shall we? Dun, 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 dun. All right, let's go. 1980s movie special. No cheating. Let's see how we go. All right, first question. 1980. This is obviously from 1980, right? Which film features people who worship Harley-Davidson motorbikes as gods? Is it A, Death Watch, sorry, B, Cyborg 009, Legend of the Super Vortex, C, Galaxina, or D, it's The Empire Strikes Back, it's Dagobah scenes. You know, Yoda actually rides a Harley when he's not, he hasn't got anything to do. So there you go, kids. Which film features people who worship Harley-Davidson motorbikes as gods? Post your answers up. I'm not reading them, so you're just doing it purely for yourself. Don't write down the answer. Just write down what you think the answer is. All right, we move on to question 2. 1981, Galaxy of Terror features which famous For All the Wrong Reasons scene? Now, the character is called, I think it's Damala, not Pamela, but Damala. Now, what we're talking about here, right, when we're talking about doing it, we're talking about like the funky chicken, or otherwise known as I would say, doing the bizzo. Right? So keep that in mind. So is it Damala doing it with a huge insect? That's A. B, Damala doing it with a huge worm. C, Damala doing it with a huge robot. Or D, all of the above, because she had a lot to do in the film. Oh, yay, team. So check that one out, kiddies. So there you go. Damala. Gotta love it. I love it. Yeah, you're right, Yoda. Yeah, the cave. Remember the Harley in the cave. Yeah, love it. All right, move on. 1982. Which film features a Kiwahara? Is it A, Bladerunner, B, Tron, C, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, or the D, the 80s remake of The Seven Samurai? I couldn't think of a proper D one. So anybody who picks D on any of these answers, you need your head read. So which film features a Kiwahara? So there you go. No Googling, no cheating. Either you know it or you don't know it. And if you get it wrong, don't worry about it. Have a good laugh. So yay, team. So all these answers are coming up. I've got no idea what people are writing or what they're responding to. All right. 1983. Wolf, the space hunter, had his 3D adventures in the where? So was it A, Forbidden Zone, B, the Twilight Zone, C, the Ozone, or D, the Sci-Fi Zone? How good is that? And yes, I did actually put this question in purely because I want to get D in there. The Sci-Fi Zone. That's where he should have been hanging out. Yay, team. Love it. Good stuff. Okay, all these answers are coming up. I hope you're getting into a bit of trivia. We're not even halfway through the decade yet. So there you go. All right, number 84. What film did Gene Simmons from the Kiss rock group appear in? He's not wearing makeup. He's Kiss makeup. Was it A, Runaway, B, Iceman, C, Sex Mission, interpret that any way you want, or D, he was in the Ewok Adventure. He was a recast Wicket. So Warwick Davis wasn't available. So they said, we just need a dude to play good old Wicket. Oh, Gene Simmons, you're in town playing some music for the band. How about we just recast you? Love it. Absolutely love it. Gene Simmons from Kiss appearing with no makeup. Oh, he obviously wore makeup. He wore stage makeup, but not the band makeup. So yes, very, very groovy. All right, 1985. The planet Firene 4 features in which film? Was it A, Cocoon, B, Life Force? And if you know Life Force, you know that because it's got a hot naked girl who doesn't say a single word. It's got to be a good movie. That's for that reason. C, Enemy Mine. Or D, that crappy Alien sequel, number 3. So, yes, good old Life Force. Gotta love space vampires, mate. That was a canon movie as well. So, they're on the right track. Naked girl, doesn't speak, can do no wrong. Yay, team. Good stuff. Oh, that's interesting. Firene 4 is actually an STD medicine. You do learn something new every day. So, you learn everything on this show. How grouse is that? All right. Question 6. In 1986, what girly magazine does Howard read in Howard the Duck? Was it A, Pent Duck, B, Play Duck, C, Rib Duck, or D, Dags Duck? Oh, yeah. Wouldn't mind checking out a bit of Dags Duck if you know. That's just wrong, isn't it? Oh, my goodness gracious me. So, yes, it's a bit tragic. But, yes, can you believe that he actually reads a girly magazine in the movie? As one does. So, yay. All right. Moving right along. Question 7. What in 1887 is a 6000 SUX? Is it a car, A, B, a robot, C, a spaceship, or D, a robot car which transforms into a spaceship? Check it out. There you go. Oh, I love this one. Yes, pluck a duck if you don't mind, umpire. Excellent work there, Jeffro. So, yes, very, very groovy. We've only got 2 years left, believe it or not, before I give you the answers. All right, 1988. What 2 films did wrestler Roddy Piper appear in this year? 2 movies in the 1 year. Was it A, They Live, an alien from LA? B, They Live, the lawless land? C, They Live, Hell Comes to Frogtown? Or D, They Live, fanboys? I couldn't think of a better answer for that either. So check it out. Now, the reason why I'm doing the trivia quiz is because all these comments are going to make the video look really impressive in the replay. People are going to say, oh my God, this is like 6 million comments. Oh my God, what were everybody talking about? And of course, they're just answers to the trivia questions. Yay, team. Very, very good. So, yes, check it out. All right, last question. In 1989, the film Slipstream featured which Star Wars actor in clearly, without a doubt, their best ever role? Was it A, Mark Hamill, B, Carrie Fisher, C, Harrison Ford, or definitely D, the guy playing the second stormtrooper to the left? Yes, they're always looking for something extra to do. So, easily their best role. I mean, this is like Oscar-winning material. So, in a movie that, oh my God, put the world on the map, as it were. So yes, I'm seeing all these letters coming on. No idea what's going on. So there you go. Absolutely fantastic. So there you go. All right. So it's time for them answers. So hopefully everybody look at this. Gavin's. I have no idea what all that means, right? Yeah, it's like a chess like moves or something. So you should put, instead of saying all purely guesses, you need to put down checkmate at the end. Love it. Good stuff. All right, it's time for them answers. All right, so question 1 in 1980, which film features people who worship Harley Davidson motorbikes as gods? Of course, it was Galaxina. And they're not Harley Davidson, it's Harley Davidson. That's how they present. And because they worship, because what they are is they're bikies from this time, but they've sort of like, it's like thousands of years in the future, and they've sort of like bred along. So they're all still bikies, but they don't know how to ride motorcycles. So when the dude steals the motorbike, they're all like, oh my God, you just kidnapped the god. But yes, Harley Davidson. Even though it wasn't the greatest movie in the world, I've got to admit, this sequence I did find amazingly amusing. Good stuff. All right, question 2. Galaxy of Terror features which famous for all the wrong reasons? It is all for the wrong reasons scene. And believe it or not, this is what put the movie on the map. Everybody goes, oh, I remember for this reason. Yes, Damala doing it with a huge worm, as you do. So they put it in the movie and they go, why? It was really, really, what do you call it? Gratuitous, right? She's naked and all the rest of it. This thing's sliming all over her. All the rest of this gigantic worm. She's actually apparently enjoying it. Yay, whatever. And of course, the movie became a hit because of that. So, yes, doing it with a huge worm. So, make of that. If you haven't seen Galaxy of Terror, good luck to you, because I neither have IEA team. All right. So, 1982, which film features Akira Hara? And the reason why I put the remake of Seven Samurai, that's Kuwasara. But of course, it is the BMX bike that Elliot rides in E.T. the Extraterrestrial. So, yes. Kuwahara. How groovy is that? Good stuff. All right, we're getting to the 80s, mate. Oh, I love it. All right, 1983. Wolf, the Space Hunter, had his 3D adventures in the water. Now, it should be the sci-fi zone, but it's not. In fact, it is the Forbidden Zone. Yes, Peter Fonda, it was in Space Hunter, a 3D movie. Back in the time when 3D movies were starting to sort of find their place in the world with Coming At You and all the rest of it. Never saw it myself. No idea what it was like, but by all accounts, it was complete tripe. So here you go. What a great name. Space Hunter, Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. Now, if Jeffro's watching this, the only adventures he wants to see is Buckaroo Banzai, because that was, what was it? Adventures, I forgot about Adventures Across the Eighth Dimension. That's right. So they're the only adventure movies he wanted to watch. But no, Space Hunter. Even today, most people will be going, what? Never heard of it. Anyway, question number 5. What film did Gene Simmons from Kiss appearing with no makeup? And believe it or not, and he turns up on screen and you go, oh, shit, what the hell's he doing here? And of course, it was in Runaway. So now, of course, back in the 80s, Kiss were gigantic. And of course, the idea of having him without the makeup in the movie is like, holy guacamole, it's just like completely unexpected. And it was particularly groovy because it's set in the sort of the near future. Tom Selleck was in it as well. He looked exactly like he just walked off from Magnum. And he's got this character, I've forgotten his character's name, shoots a gun and the bullet actually follows people around. So it's actually homes into an individual so you can't hide from it. So it goes around corners and all sort of bizarre. And they showed the point of view of the bullet. It was very, very groovy. Had Kirstie Alley in it as well, not long after she did Star Trek 2. So, yay team. So there you go. And you're right. Yes, Molly Ringwald was in the underage in the Forbidden Zone. You got to remember, a lot of 80s movies, they did sort of push the whole female involvement and the scantily clad and the really pretty, like, because the sex sells thing. love it or hate it, that's how it was back in the 80s. And yes, that's where we are today. So good stuff. It was Kiss's unmasked period, was it? At this point, I thought they were still right into it for quite some time. Anyway, 1985, The Planet Firing 4 features in which a film, and yeah, most people wouldn't even know where this planet came from, but if you did, good for you. It was, of course, was Enemy Mine. So yes, two dudes stuck on a planet, a good guy and his what do you call it? His enemy, and of course they've got to become good buddies and learn to live together. So I thought I'd just chuck that in because I thought I can't get everybody having 100% correct. Hopefully someone got this one wrong, and yay team, good stuff. See their face and put the mask back on. Indeedy doody didy. So there you go. Oh, here we go. So Rusky Babes is at 5 at the moment, so he got one wrong. So maybe this was the one he got wrong. Anyway, 1986. What girly magazine? This is an obvious one for people who know the movie. What girly magazine does Howard the Duck read in Howard the Duck? What magazine does Howard read in Howard the Duck? No, it is not Dags Duck. Although I'm sure some people out there be keen to see one of those. It, of course, was Play Duck. Why would you do that? What's the deal? So I've never seen Howard the Duck, and I think most people out there would probably say they haven't seen it either. George Lucas copped a hammering over this movie, even though he was the producer. He didn't even make it, didn't even direct it. He just produced it, right? But everybody said, mate, it's guilty by association. So, and I have actually seen online pictures of the Play Duck cover with the breasts blacked out. It's a duck, for crying out loud. So, unbelievable. So, yeah, it's exactly right. So good fun. All right. Okay, here we go. 1987. What is a 6000 SUX? Someone mentioned it earlier when we were talking about Robocop. And of course, it's Robocop. And they said it was a 300 SUX. It got the wrong model. It's a 6000 SUX. Yes. And they deliberately named it that way because it stands for sucks. And because when the movie was being made, they were making about a gag about the fact that it just chews through the petrol like you wouldn't believe. So it's an American tradition, 60,000 SUX. And if you're lucky, you'll even chuck in a Blaupunkt. Oh, dear. So, yes, good stuff. Hang on. Rusky Baby said he only managed 20 minutes. I assume that of Howard the Duck. And, yeah, it's just the concept is stupid. But, of course, Howard pops up in Guardians of the Galaxy, funnily enough. So, yay, team. All right, 1988. What two films did wrestler Roddy Piper appear in this year? Everybody knows he was in They Live. That's why I put They Live at the start. And the second one, for those who don't know, it was, of course, Hell Comes to Frogtown. And he plays the character of Sam Hell. That's the name of him. And the guy who made this became famous for making movies strictly for the video market. Now, this was at a time when the video market was really taken off, and a lot of people said, I can't shoot my movies on film. I can't afford it. I'll shoot them on video, specifically for the video market. And the guy who made this, Donald Jackson, did that. And he made Hell Comes to Frogtown and was a bit of a big budget success story. So there you go. How about that? Very, very gritty. Yes, and because that's the thing we haven't touched on is how the video market just transformed everything as far as sci-fi movies were concerned. I mean, you can say, do you remember going to the video store and there's actually a sci-fi section, right? Yeah, grouse was that. So you're a sci-fi fan, there's only one place I'm going to go, it is that section. All right, and lucky last question. The film Slipstream featured which Star Wars actor in clearly their best ever, even by today's standards, movie role, and of course it was Mark Hamill, right? So to be fair, Carrie Fisher was in The Time Guardian a couple of years prior to that, and that movie was complete and utter shit, right? So obviously Mark said, well, okay, Harrison Ford is doing so well doing Raiders of the Lost Ark and Bladerunner and all these movies. I'm going to be in a movie too. And Slipstream, I don't think anybody either saw it, remembered it, or cares about it. It just tanked, absolutely tanked. So, and until a few years later when he did Batman, the voice of the Joker for the Batman animated series, this one just did not cut the mustard at all. So, yes, indeedy doody didy, and that is all done. We're all finished. Yay, team. So, all right. So, tally up your scores, kids. Tell me who got what. He got 32 out of 9 for creativity. I absolutely love that. Rusky Babes got 8. Which one did you get wrong, Rusky Babes? So that's actually very, very good. Guy said he got 4. Daniel said he remembers seeing Slipstream. It's like nobody even remembers it. It's just come and gone and all that. Russell said Carrie Fisher was in lithium for all the time. Yeah, Time Guardian. And when you would have thought, I mean, it was like in 2 years after Jedi or something like that. And it was just horrendous. So there you go. Jeffro got 9 out of 10. Well done. I'm curious to see if you all got the same one wrong. Yes, very good. Daniel Hyder, because it was Mark in it, and then he gave it back afterwards, thinking, "Yep, okay, I'm just going to move on from there." William's got 2 copies of Slipstream. Why? So there you go. Maybe you can put one under each foot and use them to like ice skate around or something. So, and he got 6 out of 10. So, what do you reckon, kids? You reckon that was all pretty groovy? So, love it. So, right, yes, good fun. All right, now it is now 9:25. I really don't want to go any further than this. The ET bike was the hard one. Yes, the Kiwahara. I mean, yeah, you sort of forget there was Mongoose and there was Red Line and all the rest of it, but Kiwahara is what he had in the movie. So, okay. Actually, I thought Jeffro got 9 and you got 8. So I think Jeffro's ahead of you, old son. So it looks like Jeffro may actually have the voucher. Violating our trivia quiz, Slipstream didn't have an issue with Howard the Ducky. There you go. You'd be in the absolute minority in that regard, in my opinion. So there you go. One is a part of a 4-pack. Okay, good stuff. I mean, all these messages keep coming through. It's just crazy. There we go. 2 copies of Slipstream, but hates Dune and never saw ET. Yeah, exactly right. That's a very good point. I think there's something concerning your video choices there, Mr. William Yat. Aaron has said who you send the voucher to. I think Jeffro at this point is the one who has got it so far. He said he had 9 out of 10, which is very impressive. Just screwed up on the BMX bike. So yay team for that. Very good stuff. The key thing is that, and I'm going to sort of wrap this up now. The 80s was a fantastic time for science fiction movies. Sure, there was a lot of TV series that came out, but just for movies, as I said, it was the whole decade was just a great success story right across the board. Now, to be fair, there was a lot of movies that were made like independently, a lot of stuff that came on video. There's a lot of rubbish in there as well. But I think for those of us who lived through that era and got to see this stuff when it first came out and got introduced to these things for the very, very first time, it was almost like an awakening to a large degree as a fan to say, we're not just second-class citizens anymore. We're now actually being treated respectfully by the studios who know there's a lot of money to be made in making good quality sci-fi. And even though like 4 decades later, that trend has continued on, it's good to know that we were there when it was all sort of happening. And I've got to say, as a science fiction fan, the 80s was one era that you don't want to just knock back. And I think in decades to come, it'll still be remembered really, really fondly, especially as a lot of franchises started in the 80s, regardless of how many other crappy sequels they make and reboots and all this sort of bullshit. So there you go. Ingo, go out with a dinner with Dia. Well, exactly right. Now, that's your first prize, Mr. Jeffrey. So yay, team. And yes, just to clarify, we did actually run a convention 5 years ago celebrating the 80s, and it was called Con 80, which was magnificent. It was a one-off event, and we absolutely loved it. But like all good things, they came to an end, and this show is another one. I've only got 2 episodes left. Oh, I'm actually going to show you what I'm doing next week. So just so you're interested in knowing what I'm talking about next week, quickly, I'm going to tap into my other favorite passion. Of course, I need to have a good chat about it. Of course, it is strictly Star Wars. I'm doing a big discussion on just my thoughts, views on the Star Wars saga. That's the whole lot, right? And be curious to see if how the discussion prevails and where we end up with it all. So hopefully you've enjoyed my natterings and gurglings. And yes, you're right, Claire, Con 80 was awesome fun. We brought back the magic of conventions of old EA team. All right, and with that in mind, I'm going to buzz off. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Hopefully I'll see you all next week. Yay, team, to nerd out a little bit more with the Dags. And in the interim, make sure if you're going to watch 80 sci-fi movies, you do it in the zone. All right, leave it to it. Take care. See you next week for some Star Wars action. Go off and watch the Book of Boba Fett. That's Star Wars. Okay, bye.